Welcome to Imprint, a podcast about creating a home and life you love. I'm Natalie Walton, an interior designer, stylist, and best-selling author focused on an holistic approach to homes. Each week, I'm sharing insights and interviews about the creative process to help you enhance both your interiors and well-being, as well as provide you with the tools and resources to make considered and sustainable choices with all that you create. Hello everyone, welcome to Imprint. Well, what does it really take to create spaces that feel effortless, meaningful, and deeply personal? After years of styling interiors, I've learned that great design is about so much more than making a space just look beautiful. It is about storytelling and a few other magic ingredients that we're going to get into today. So whether you are a seasoned designer, an aspiring stylist, or someone who loves basically creating a home with intention, I trust that these insights are going to really help you see styling in a whole new way. So I am going to be sharing with you something that is very close to my heart, the 5 biggest lessons that I've learned on my journey as an interior stylist, because I realized that this year actually marks 15 years since my first photo shoot where I styled 3 different offices was published in Real Living magazine. And that was in March 2010. And this year, obviously, is 2025. And so it has been quite a journey. Since then, I have styled photo shoots for not only Real Living magazine, but then I went on to style for House and Garden, Inside Out, Home Beautiful, Marie Claire, Harper's Bazaar, and had my work featured in a range of publications across the globe, including Elder Decoration, Martha Stewart. There's so many all across the world, like Brazil, Sweden. My work has been published all over, which is incredible. It's been quite a journey. And obviously I have styled for other brands, for my own books, interior design clients. I mean, I was styling somebody's home for real estate photography only just before Christmas, and of course my own home. And over the years, every project, every client, every challenge has shaped the way that I approach styling and design. And beyond just making spaces look beautiful, styling really is, and what I've learned is it's about storytelling. And storytelling is so powerful. It is how we connect. It is how we remember things. It is how we feel emotion. And storytelling leaves a lasting impression. And it is integral to creating connection and bringing spaces to life in a way that feels deeply personal. So whether you are an aspiring stylist, a creative, or simply someone who loves to make their home feel special, I hope that these lessons are really going to resonate with you. So let's dive in. The first lesson is that, as I've already sort of teased, storytelling is everything. Styling isn't just about aesthetics. It's about telling a story. And this is something that I didn't realize at the time when I first did that first photo shoot. My journey to getting into styling, some of you who have been listening to the podcast for a while will know that I have been working as a journalist for a number of years. I started working at Real Living magazine, first as the deputy chief sub-editor, which is like a copy editor. If you are in America, you might know it as a copy editor, but I was the deputy chief sub-editor. And then the deputy editor went on to maternity leave. And so then I quickly became the deputy editor of the magazine and was involved in all different areas of production. I was writing copy, I was editing copy, coming up with content ideas, creating references for photo shoots to give to stylists. And over a period of time, I would see these stylists style these shoots, style people's homes, and create these beautiful images. And I just could not believe that this was somebody's job, that they would get a brief, they would have a shoot date, they would go out, source the products, source the items, bring things either to somebody's home or to a photo studio for a set, and either build an office, a living room, a bedroom in a studio, or they would style somebody's home. And that was done in one of 2 ways. You were either styling the person's home and it was a home feature. So you're really bringing, the space to life in terms of showcasing it in its best possible light. Or sometimes homes would be used as locations, and a lot of the homeowner's personal things, if not everything, was taken out of the room, and all these props and products were put into the room to create a completely different look. And so the home was just used as a backdrop. And I had no idea that this kind of world existed, that this kind of job existed. And it really was this kind of big wide-eye moment where I thought, wow, this is incredible. How can I do this? But I thought, I didn't even think that it was possible, because I was a writer. I was the deputy editor. I was, on content meetings and writing and editing and doing all of these other things that had nothing really to do with that, in terms of, I was in the office. I was not out, one of these freelancers as the creatives. But over time, that whisper got louder and louder. And I always say to you that those whispers that we have within, they are like the GPS signal for our dreams and our desires. And if we listen to them, if we follow those whispers, they will take us to our ultimate destiny in terms of what is in our lives, what we should be doing. Because I truly believe that we have them for a reason, because I have different dreams and desires that are going to be very different to your dreams and desires. They're going to look different the way that you want it. Even if you say, well, I want to be a stylist too, or I want to be an interior designer too, the way that you want to do that, the way that it's going to look in terms of the way that you create that business, or, offer your services, or the type of services you offer, are going to look very different. So the more that we are in tune and really listen to what are those dreams and desires within us, what are those whispers that are speaking louder and louder, that is going to help us get onto the path of doing the thing that we truly love. And so over time, I got the courage, because the whisper was getting so loud that it was like, I have to speak to Deb. I can't keep going on, because I was getting more and more frustrated with myself. So anyway, I ended up putting my hand. She said yes, which was terrifying. And then I did the shoot. I styled 3 offices in a photo studio. And I just went, it was actually, the first one was actually at what was then called ACP Magazines, which is now called, I don't know, it's changed its name about 3 times since there. Then I think it's called R Media. It's still where House and Garden magazine is published, and now House Beautiful, which used to be at Pacific Magazines. Anyway, that's a whole other story. But the point being that I had to build these 3 sets, and it was such a journey in terms of, I had 3 ideas, 3 themes, if you will, in terms of what they were going to look like. One was crafty, one was boho, and one was kind of more that sort of domino look, sort of a little bit like Hollywood Regency style, that was big in the around that time where Domino magazine, when it first started to get published, and it was really big, 2010, of course. Sorry, obviously, when I'm on the spot, I just freeze. I'm like a deer in headlights when it comes to fast maths. And so it was around that time where, there was a lot of the Hollywood Regency. Kelly Wearstler, she had books out that you would not even recognize today. I think she had like a restaurant in Bergdorf Goodman in New York, and it was lots of piping, piping on everything, that kind of like deep, rich pink with the navy blue kind of color, lots of Moroccan motifs on things. Anyway, you get the idea. And so they really became the theme for this shoot. And over time, I've realized how important this is. Really the foundation of storytelling is, what are you trying to convey in a space? And I've really learned that the most memorable spaces are those that really reflect this, either obviously the people who live in the home, or the idea that you're trying to convey. What is the story that you're trying to tell? And that every object, every texture, every color choice should really have a purpose and a place, obviously within the bigger picture of the home, but also that they should always speak back to what is the story that we are telling here. And research really does show that our brains are wired for storytelling. There was a study by Princeton neuroscientist Yuri Hassan, and he found that when we hear a story, our brains sync with the storyteller's brain, and this creates a really deep connection. And this is why homes that tell a meaningful story feel so much more inviting and authentic. And one of the biggest shifts in my work came when I started asking, what story am I telling here? So instead of just simply, selecting beautiful objects, I focused on how they contributed to the overall feel and the function of a space. And that the best interiors are really the ones that are infused with meaning, because they're expressing the personality, they're expressing the values, what's at the core and the heart of the person who has created this space. And those stories had to be cohesive too, because when I was styling for a magazine, every styling feature had to look and feel different to the next one to create a rhythm within the magazine. So as you can imagine, a magazine is split up into different sections. Usually the first section is like what's new, what's trending, that kind of idea. Smaller grabs, to hook people in. And then you go to what is usually then there would be a sort of longer shopping type styling feature, which was my first styling feature. And then you go to what's called the well of the magazine, which is where all the house features are. And then you have small, shorter features towards the end, usually travel or food or those kind of different sections. And so each home within the magazine needs to have a sense of rhythm and cohesion, but be uniquely its own. And because you don't want to just have like 3 homes in a row that look exactly the same, because they're just going to get lost and the reader is going to think, oh, it's only got 1 house featured this month, when in fact it's got 3 or 4, maybe even 5. Usually it was 3 or 4. And so you really want each one to stand on its own. And this is when storytelling is really important as well, because each story is going to be different. Each home is going to be different. Each styled space is going to look and feel different. And so really think about, for you, when you visited a home or maybe an interior, so maybe it was like even a hotel or an Airbnb, and it really captivated you, and think about the elements that transported you. These are often the homes that every piece has a backstory. It's a travel souvenir from Italy, or maybe a ceramic wall light that was made by a local artisan, or a vintage chair that was passed down from a family member. These are the elements that make a space feel unique and personal. So next time you're styling a space, really pause and ask yourself, does this piece feel true to the home and the people who live in it? Is it sharing their story? And when I am styling other people's homes, I am really looking at their collections through my own lens and my own eye and vision and how I know things work together. But I really want it to reflect the homeowner and the story of their lives and what is most important and valuable to them. Okay, the second lesson is to edit ruthlessly but thoughtfully. So in the Styling Masterclass, which is my signature program, I'm always telling students to edit more than they style. The tendency is to keep adding to our spaces, but we need to edit instead. Restraint, and that's using your resistance, is just as important as creativity. So we can get excited with ideas, and start sourcing and filling an interior with every single idea that we have. And that is actually what I did on that first shoot. Like, I remember particularly the crafty space. I mean, like everything, like the things that were on the pin board and the pins on the pin board. And look, there's nothing wrong with that, but it was just, there was so much stuff in that particular space. And that's definitely the weakest of the 3 spaces that I styled. I just had every single idea in there. And so what ends up happening is it's so easy to overfill a space and it just becomes overwhelming. Your eye doesn't know where to look. But, we also need to be careful on the flip side. If we remove too much, then a space can feel cold and impersonal, especially when those objects don't have, that storytelling element, when they've just been kind of all bought from the same store, or they've just kind of, it's like a copy and paste, and there's no sense of the homeowner's personality in that space. We really always want to be looking at how can we infuse personality into spaces. And that's when we look to vintage, pieces that have been handed down, repurposed, they've got some personal element. And there's a concept in psychology called the paradox of choice. And this is when too many options can lead to decision paralysis. And the same idea applies to styling. A cluttered space can feel chaotic, while one that is well edited feels intentional and calming. So when it comes to spaces, we want to strike that right balance between, obviously we don't want to overfill a space, we don't want it to feel cold and impersonal, but we really want to, find that sweet spot within our spaces where there is, there's enough space, there is enough breathing space, a visual white space, obviously it doesn't have to be white, but, like that kind of negative space within a room that allows the eye to move around the room, that allows the eye to connect the pieces of the story together and really come up with their own interpretation and their own meaning. It's like a good piece of art. Different people can see and interpret things from the same piece of art, but we can all have a connection to it. So it's also like, think about walking into a beautifully curated boutique versus, one that is like a cluttered department store where you just can't make sense of what is on display because it's just too much. I mean, there are some shops that you can walk into and there's just so much stuff there, or the clothes are just jammed onto the racks that you just can't even see what is on display. And then you can go into another boutique, and this is kind of like that flip side as well, where they've got so few items in there that you kind of almost stand in one spot. You can rotate 360 degrees and then you just walk straight out again because there's no sense of curiosity to be able to kind of explore and see a few little things that you might have missed. So you want to kind of get that fine balance. And interestingly, I also think that, many places are selling the same linen sheets or the same linen dresses, and they're made in the same countries, the same places. But in a shop, the price tag is determined by the amount of space around the product. More curated shops charge more, which is something good to keep in mind for your services. When you create a sense of space, both in your interiors and in your branding, your social media feeds, your website, all the things that you do, you create a sense of luxury. Because luxury is about that it's considered, it's been edited, it's been curated, it's thoughtful, it's intentional. And that is what makes something feel luxurious. It's not about necessarily the price tag. It's not even necessarily about the materials. It really is about the sense of spaciousness instead of like trying to jam a million ideas. And on my journey, I've really learned that editing is an art. It's about curating with intention, choosing pieces that add value, whether it's functional, emotional, or aesthetic. So really try removing one item from your space when you're styling it and see if the space feels more balanced or if there is more breathing room. And notice if it's missing, if it feels like there's an empty spot. If it does, then you can put the object back. But if not, if it feels like, oh, actually, no, that feels like it's imbalanced, then you've created more breathing room for your design to really, shine, for it to feel more elevated and luxurious. The third idea is to embrace imperfection. And so one of the big realizations I had when I was sourcing homes for my first book, This Is Home, which is 7 years old this year, is that an interior can be perfectly designed, but that doesn't mean it's what I call truly beautiful. And what I mean by this, or not beautiful to me anyway, and I would suggest not beautiful to most people, is that beauty embraces imperfection, just like in nature. And it's so easy to chase perfection in interiors, but the most captivating spaces, the ones that end up going viral on social media, they're the ones that sort of have a lot of personality, and they have personality because, there is some contrast, there is some dissonance in terms of the choice of objects or the way that things are being put together. If everything is too matchy-matchy or too perfect, it just doesn't feel real. It doesn't really feel like somebody lives there. It feels and looks like it has been designed. It doesn't look or feel like it is somebody's home. And so, it's not expressing the personality of the homeowner. And so for me, some of my favorite styling moments really involve those kind of contrasts when you have a space that is perhaps contemporary, but it's got a rustic table, or, you've got a vintage rug in a space where it's maybe a little bit unexpected, or you've got handmade ceramics that are used for a soap dish in a bathroom. Those unexpected touches, the imperfections of both the materials, but also the placement and the objects themselves. And, we are drawn to imperfection because it is nature. The Japanese philosophy of wabi-sabi celebrates beauty in imperfection. It emphasizes the charm of things that are weathered, asymmetrical, and flawed in some way. And so for me, as I mentioned, when I was doing that first book and sourcing homes, and I was looking at these beautiful, sometimes architectural designed homes, and sometimes the frame was beautiful, but they were void of personality. And I was really trying to understand, what is it that makes a place feel like a home? And for me, and for now hundreds of thousands of people around the world who have bought, and reviewed the book and shared it with friends and family members and bought it for, their sisters and their mothers, that idea resonates. We want to create spaces that feel like a home, and so really look at ways that you can embrace imperfection in your spaces and add more personality. So instead of focusing on perfection, aim for personality. Look for pieces that, are infused with meaning, texture, and history. The fourth lesson is that when you feel stuck, look to nature. So whenever I'm feeling maybe uninspired, I always turn to nature. Whenever I'm not certain of how can I make this work, or the color combinations, the best color palettes, textures, and shapes, they exist all around us. Think earthy tones, soft greens, deep blues, warm neutrals. Nature has a way of grounding a space and making it feel calm and connected. And studies have shown that incorporating natural elements in design can reduce stress and improve well-being. This has seen the rise of biophilic design. I'm seeing this more and more, that people are putting this on their profiles on their Instagram and really embracing this as a design concept, based on the idea that we really want and need to bring the outside in to enhance our living spaces. And looking for various ways that we can do this through, obviously, on one level, it can be plants, or it can be the types of materials that we have in our spaces too. So think of a room that's filled with natural light. That's always my favorite natural element to introduce into any space. Organic cotton textiles, a linen covered sofa, indoor plants, if you can keep them alive. Unfortunately, I'm not so good at that. I can do the other things, even just opening the windows, letting fresh air in, the sunlight, looking at different ways that we can embrace nature in our spaces. And this kind of environment instantly feels more restful and inviting. I always remember one of the first kind of bits of collateral, I guess, or catalogs that I kept was by a brand called Society, and they did linen. I think they're still around. I think it's an Italian brand. And they had these photos of this, this beautiful linen hanging in the sun with the grass. And I just always, those images have always stayed with me. This connection between textiles and nature and sunlight and just beauty all around us. So really think about, how can you incorporate natural materials like linen and timber or stone in your spaces? How can you bring the outside in with, whether it's greenery or natural light or organic forms? I'm always looking for, how can this be, something that feels more natural, feels more organic, doesn't look manufactured, doesn't look mass, market. That's where sometimes, you get these big box stores and they take something that, excuse me, is trending. I actually went to a hardware store the other day, and even my daughter said, "Oh, look, that looks so fake." And they had created an outside table, and they have got this plastic film on the table to look like travertine, but it's not travertine. And I just thought, oh, that's just so wrong on so many different levels. So, even though sometimes you can buy things that look like they're sort of natural, just go for the real thing if you're going to do it. Number 5, confidence changes everything. One of the hardest lessons that I've learned is to trust my instincts. And, early on, I second-guessed my styling decision so much. It took me so long to style those spaces, and so long to source and make those decisions, even in the sourcing process. Every step of the journey took so long, because I was, is this right? Oh, and I would get so many different things as a backup. But I've discovered that the most powerful designs and the most beautifully styled spaces come from a place of confidence and authenticity. And basically, confidence is built through repeated action. So the more that you make creative decisions, the more you strengthen your intuition and develop a style that feels uniquely yours. I love this quote from Rick Rubin in his book, I think it's called A Creative Act. And he says, being an artist is not about having talent. It's about having a vision, the courage to pursue it, and the willingness to see it through. And so often we can get caught up in like, I'm not good enough. I don't have enough talent. They're so much better at this than me. These are all the thoughts that can loop through our heads. And, quite honestly, like certainly when I started and even now, I don't feel like I'm the most talented stylist out there. And I'm not saying this as false modesty, but what I am is persistent and I don't give up and I just keep on trying. And, so I want you to know that if you don't think that you have enough talent, it doesn't matter. Instead, make up for it with your vision and that courage to implement your vision and really see it through to the end and dare to see things differently. Keep showing up, keep refining your work, keep evolving what you create, and just keep taking that next step forward. We can very easily fall into, this pattern of feeling like we're not good enough, our work is not good enough, we're never going to make it, we're never going to, get to where we want to go. But when we focus instead on what is our next best move, what is the thing that we can do to make progress, focus on that instead. And some of the most well-known designers, like Axel Vervoet and Kelly Wearstler, like they have distinctive styles because they fully embrace their vision without hesitation. Their confidence is what makes their work so compelling. It's sometimes, to be quite honest, in some cases, there are some designers out there and what they create, I don't actually think is that beautiful, but they do it with such confidence. There is such a commitment to their idea that it's brilliant because they're so committed to their vision that you can't help but applaud that. And it's not to say that it's like technically beautiful or even, imperfectly beautiful, but they are so committed to their look. I mean, it's like fashion. Some things I can look at and go, that's incredible, but I don't like it. It's incredible because the fashion designer is so committed to the look. So, for you, really believe in your vision, because when you believe in your vision, when you start believing in it, then others will too. So this is why it's so important to develop your unique style. Trust your process and don't be afraid to take creative risks. Confidence is contagious, and the more that you lean into it, the more naturally it will come. And if you want to kind of go deeper on this idea, I've got a free class called The Confident Stylist. If you want, I'll put a link in the show notes. You can register and go to nataliewalton.com/confident. And I share the 3 essential steps to feel more confident creating your interiors. So I have always such amazing feedback on that class. So if you want to join and you have not yet joined, then come join, and it will give you a really good foundation to feeling confident with creating any kind of space. So really, styling is a journey of learning, evolving, and growing. And each of these lessons have really shaped how I approach my work. And I really hope that they offer something for you to reflect on your own journey. This could be an opportunity for you to consider, what have you learned on your journey? What 5 lessons would you share with someone else about your journey so far? And here's a tip, which is kind of building on last week's podcast about social media. Write those lessons down. Use that as content for your social media. If you've got a weekly newsletter, share it on your weekly newsletter. We have all learned lessons, and it is such a valuable experience to take a moment to reflect on what have been some of the big lessons that you have learned on this journey. So I hope that you found this episode valuable. As always, I love to hear from you. You could send me a message at Natalie Walton on Instagram. Send me a screenshot. I would love to see you listening to the episode, or you can add a comment in the review. This is episode 230. Thank you so much for joining me today on Imprint. See you soon. And in the meantime, go create some magic, and most of all, go make your mark. All of the links and info for this episode are at nataliewalton.com/podcast. Don't forget to subscribe so that you can get a direct download of the latest episode.
And I really appreciate when you take a minute to rate and review, as well as share the love with someone you know who might benefit from this episode, or on social media. If you'd like to access a range of free resources, come visit my website, nataliewalton.com. Thank you to Jaeger Media for producing this podcast. And I would also like to acknowledge the people of the Bundjalung Nation where it was recorded, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. I look forward to connecting again soon. I'm Natalie Walton, and you've been listening to Imprint.